Baroness Casey's child gang rape report has been released. I found it, and as promised, I'm going to go through it with you guys live right now in today's Red Alert podcast. Hey up everyone and welcome to Political Nerds. I'm Steph the Alter Nerd, your nerdy political guide from Washington DC to Westminster and beyond. I am live on the first Red Alert broadcast for Political Nerds. Not only live here on YouTube, but I am simultaneously live also on Twitter as well. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Steph Alter Nerd. So welcome to all the Twitter viewers out there as well. As promised, I am going to go through Baroness Casey's child gang rape report, which has finally been released. Now, before I give you all the information you guys need to know, please make sure you do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and as a disclaimer, I'm not inciting hatred to anyone or particular group, religion, etc. Now, whilst I go through the report with you guys, I will also go through your chats. Anyone that sends a super chat, your chats are guaranteed to be read out. Any other chats, I'll pick out the ones that stand out to me, but please be aware that yours are not guaranteed to be read. So, for those that want to read the report in your own time, if you're watching live on YouTube, it's pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching on the replay on YouTube, it will be in the description bar below. And for those watching on Twitter, you can go on my profile, and I made this post in the last hour with the link to the full report from Baroness Casey on the Muslim child rape gang. And here it is. Now, the issue that I've got, firstly, with this report, is it was really, really, really difficult to actually find. Yeah. Finding this report online was not easy whatsoever. At all. Now, I wonder why. It was so difficult for someone like me to actually find this report in the first place. But you know what? Here we go, guys. Here it is, the final audit report, the National Audit on Group-Based Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse by Baroness Casey of Blackstock. DBE CB June 2025. Wendy Newman up saying, oh no, your light is red. Yes, it is red because this is the first Red Alert broadcast right here on Political Nerds. So, I thought kind of go with the theme. Do you know what I mean? Anywho, let's get back to this. So, the first page is all about the acknowledgements. So Baroness Casey of Blackstock and team are grateful to all of those who gave their time and expertise during the course of this audit. They've drawn on the knowledge, information and expertise of those working across central and local government, policing and the criminal justice system and the voluntary and community sector, as well as the independent expertise of many people. So they went around on this. Many people gave up their time at short notice, shared honest feedback, and responded to numerous data and fact requests at speed. There are too many individuals and organisations to list here, but their contributions have been vital. One particular thanks must go to the survivors of group-based child sexual exploitation and their families, both to those survivors who gave their time to speak to this audit and to those whose stories are included in this report. We'd also like to acknowledge the contribution of the brave and compassionate journalist Andrew Norfolk, who sadly died while we were undertaking this work. And so then the next page goes on to the contents, what we are to expect whilst we go through this report. And here we go. So this is the executive summary of it all. So they say here, this audit is focused on group-based child sexual exploitation, CSE, by grooming gangs. It's rare, but it's one of the most horrendous crimes in our society. It involves multiple perpetrators coercing, manipulating, and deceiving children into, I'm going to say here, sex, to create an illusion of consent. while public attitudes have shifted and children who used to be called child prostitutes are now understood to be victims of child exploitation, there continues to be an awkwardness in society with acknowledging and discussing child sexual abuse, and there remains a tendency to apportion blame to adolescent children for their own abuse. Now, this is absolutely shocking to me, right? I've seen the headlines. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the headlines as well, where the victims got blamed. Not only that, they got called prostitutes, or they were called willing participants in it all, and some of them got freaking charged. The victims got charged and done, but the actual monsters, they walked away free. My mind is blown. This is insane. Public attitudes. How do I put this, right? The English, the British public attitude, right, generally speaking, is if you, it's disgusting for me to say this, but if you have intimate relations with an underage, a child, you're a pedo. It's as simple as that. That has always been, yeah, the British public attitude of it all, yeah? There's another certain attitude, right, that seemingly, in my opinion, conspiracy theory or whatever, does not have that kind of outlook when it comes to being disgustingly intimate with children. Now, actually, if you read their holy book, it's freaking sanctioned. All I'm going to say is this, right? How old was Aisha when Muhammad married her? And then how old was Aisha when then Muhammad consummated their marriage? I'm just asking a question there for a friend. You fill in the answers. So, we have to be very, very careful with this report as well, okay? The British public attitude all along has been, if you are disgustingly intimate with a child, you are a pedo. It's as simple as that. Done, dusted, draw the line, done. Right? That's always been the case. Let's not fool ourselves here, all right? It's certain other sections of society that I think have to catch up a little bit. Or should I say, catch up a hell of a lot. Anywho. So, they say there continues to be an awkwardness in society with acknowledging and discussing child sexual abuse, and there remains a tendency to apportion blame to adolescent children for their own abuse. Yeah, we all know why. Because the authorities and those people in action, they're supposed to protect our children in the first place, didn't do a damn thing because they were scared of being seen as racist. This audit is the latest in a long line of initiatives and measures looking into child sexual exploitation undertaken since the government adopted its first definition in 2009. Reviews, recommendations and strategies on child sexual exploitation raise the same issues repeatedly. System failures in information sharing, the need for more training, understanding of risk factors of victims, and the importance of collecting better data and information on perpetrators, including on ethnicity. Yeah. The other thing that they need to get over is, regardless of the monster's ethnicity, they need to feel the full weight of the law if they are raping little children. Done. Whether you are English, Welsh, Irish, Scottish, of the Muslim faith, Buddhist, French, Italian, whatever. Whether you're black, white, pink, purple, blue, multicolored, don't give a shit, right? If you, and again, I can't believe I have to say it and it disgusts me, but I've got to here. I'm trying not to water down my language here. If you are raping little children, I don't give a shiz what colour skin you are, what religion you are, no matter what. You should feel the full weight of the freaking law, and no religion should be protecting you at all. Oh, just because you're a certain religion, just because you're of a certain faith, no one's going to do anything to you because they're fearful that they're going to be seen as racist. What about the kids? What about the children? And I'm very, very passionate about it. And this hurts me a lot because even though, guys, and I've been completely honest about this, I am not a victim of child gang rape. I'm not, all right? Let me be very clear on that, all right? I am, unfortunately, a victim of child rape. Unfortunately, there was a monster in my life when I was younger, and he would repeatedly rape and molest me when I was a little child. Thank goodness, when the time came, you know, I had things in place because of the authorities and the school and all that lot to help me get through it eventually. Shiz the freaking bed. The majority of the gang rape victims that I'm reading about here got nothing, got no help whatsoever. Instead, they're the ones that got demonised. They're the ones that got arrested. They're the ones that sometimes got even prosecuted. They're the ones that were called freaking prostitutes. There was I think I read it at one point, a 10-year-old, right? Being raped by one of these gangs, and they turn around and they call her, the authorities called her a prostitute. Like, my mind's blown. Or others were called willing participants. Okay, how can, let's say, a 10-year-old child be a willing participant in having sex with an adult? I don't even know what it means. They don't even know what it is. Let me put it this way to you, okay? When it was happening to me, right, even if I wanted to say something, I couldn't, because I didn't have the knowledge to be able to tell people what was happening to me at the time. Because, guys, back in the 90s, you know, when I was of that age and it was happening to me, back then, schools, there wasn't really any sex education in primary schools at all. It was only when you went to secondary school that you started to have sex education. And that's when, for me, the penny dropped. When I was being taught about sex education, the penny dropped. I figured out what happened to me when I was younger. I knew it was wrong when it was happening to me. But again, I just couldn't put the words as to what was going on with me, right? And what was happening to me. And what was being done to me, right? So I take that experience, yeah, and I look at all these other children that are victims of the child gang rapes, and I'm there thinking, how can any authority, how can any policeman think that a 10-year-old is fully cognizant to the point where they know exactly what's going on when it comes to sex? Not a chance. Not a fucking chance in hell. Ugh. Let's go back to the report. So, this audit is the latest in a long line of initiatives and measures looking into child exploitation undertaken since the government adopted its first definition in 2009. Reviews, recommendations and strategies on child sexual exploitation raise the same issues repeatedly. System failures in information sharing, the need for more training, understanding of risk factors of victims, and the importance of collecting better data and information on perpetrators, including on ethnicity. The policy and delivery landscape for child sexual abuse and exploitation is spread across government departments and statutory bodies, and therefore requires strong leadership, common purpose, and above all, a grip on the policy. But what emerges instead over at least the last decade is a repeating cycle. Seminal moments of scandal and public outrage, which lead to bursts of government focus and activity, but no sustained improvement, leaving victims and the public with insufficient justice, action, accountability, or answers. So even Baroness Keir is recognising this cycle that we've been in all along, right? The issue of the child gang rapes come up, right? The politicians then jump on it. They're all this, right? They're all talk, but then they're no action, because then they're waiting for it to all die down, for us all to forget about it, so then they can get away with it. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of them, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, are freaking complicit. So many in Labour, I bet you right now, are looking over their shoulders in fear. In fear. And all the MPs that represent all the cities and towns that we know of, where child gang rape by predominantly Muslims are happening, if they don't resign now, oh, mark my words, they'll be resigning later down the line. They will. Now, apologies, guys. Got a little bit of a hay fever situation going on, so if I go for my little tissue here, you know why. Anywho, let's get back to this. So, the policy and delivery landscape for child sexual abuse and exploitation is spread across government departments and statutory bodies, and therefore requires strong leadership, common purpose, and above all, a grip on the policy. But what emerges instead over at least the last decade is a repeating cycle. That cycle that I've just talked about here. Now, let's look at the next section, the scale of child sexual exploitation. We were unable to provide an assessment on the scale of group-based child sexual exploitation. There's no recent study of the prevalence of child sexual abuse and exploitation in the population. Confusing and inconsistently applied definitions and incomplete data across the police, local authorities, health, and the criminal justice system obscure it. The concept of grooming gangs, while well known to the public, is not captured clearly in any official data set. Now, again, this is all my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions. However, there has been a lot of focus, right, on that there's not enough data, or that all the data is not being captured properly, right? Or the data that's being captured, it's not really good enough, right? Things that Baroness Keir is recognising right here. Let me say this. It's all by design. Let me explain. The lack of information, the lack of data, right, that the authorities are not, getting or providing this, that, and the other, the lack of data is designed to do one thing and one thing only: confuse the masses and leave us in the dark. Because if there's not enough data, right, and if the data that we've got is a little bit iffy like that, yeah, how's that going to leave you? Confused and in the dark. Confused because the data, we don't have enough data, right, to be able to make a decision of what the hell's going on. So you're thinking, well, what the hell is going on, right? And that, therefore, leaves you in the dark. The fact that the police, local authorities, the health and the criminal justice system, right, did not collate accurate data is by design. It's by design. Because if they did, then we would know for definite the numbers, the extent, the impact that this disease has taken hold of us in the UK right now. We'd know. We'd know. The fact that we don't is down to these here. I was going to swear then, but, I'm trying my best. So they say the data we were able to identify shows that around 500,000 children a year are likely to experience child sexual abuse of any kind. However, for the vast majority, their abuse is not identified and it's not reported to the police, either at the time or later. Now, 500,000 children, horrific. Horrific, right? Let me tell you this, tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. Guaranteed. Bullet point number 2, police recorded crime data shows just over 100,000 offences of child sexual abuse and exploitation recorded in 2024, with around 60% of these being contact offences and the remainder online offences. Of these contact offences, an estimated 17,100 are flagged by police as child sexual exploitation in police recorded crime data. Now, this is the thing. I cannot trust that figure of 17,100. Why? Because just as the authorities, right, have turned around and essentially said that they didn't go after the perpetrators of, the child gang rapes because they didn't want to be seen as racist, yeah? I think that same thought process applied to police recording crime data of child sexual abuse and exploitation online. Or the same thought process applied when police were flagging these contact offences as child sexual exploitation. Do you see where I'm coming from there? The only figure on group-based child sexual exploitation comes from a new police data set called the Complex and Organised Child Abuse Data Set, otherwise known as COCAD, which, while suffering a number of limitations, has identified around 700 recorded offences of group-based child sexual exploitation in 2023. Again, this is the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. I'm sure you all have seen the map of the UK and all the dots, right, indicating every city and every town that we know has been blighted by this insidious disease that needs to be eradicated. 700 is unfortunately, and I'm saying horrifically, it's low. It's low. Given how underreported child sexual exploitation is, the flaws in the data collection, and the confusing and inconsistently applied definitions, it's highly unlikely that this accurately reflects the true scale of child sexual exploitation. Here we go. Or group-based exploitation. It's failure of public policy over many years that there remains such limited, reliable data in this area. The thing is, these bastards, they knew for decades, they knew for years, right? What's been going on? Systematic raping of predominantly British white children by predominantly Muslim-led rape gangs. Those bastards knew for decades, for years, that this was happening. And so with them knowing, they had every opportunity over the years to amend the process to ensure that these crimes were recorded properly and the data was collected properly. But not only that, the correct data, right? And for it all to be consistent throughout every authority, throughout every police force, throughout every council. The bastards knew for years. But they're like, oh, well, sorry, we don't have all the data because, everyone does it all differently. They knew. They should have all come together and streamlined it. They didn't. They didn't. Are you going to give them mercy? I know I'm not. So the nature of group-based child sexual exploitation. So the grooming gangs model remains similar to well-known cases like those in Rotherham, with often a man targeting a vulnerable adolescent child, often those in care or children with learning or physical disabilities, grooming them into thinking they are their boyfriend, showering them with love and gifts and taking them out. Subsequently, they pass them to other men for sex using drugs and alcohol to make children compliant, often turning to violence and coercion to control them. It's otherwise known or being called, from what I've read, as the boyfriend model. And so Baroness Casey is saying this hasn't changed significantly over time, although the grooming process is now as likely to start online, and hotspots might have moved from parks to vape shops and the use of hotels with anonymous check-in facilities. Grooming gangs are often loosely interconnected based around existing social connections, and so often broadly homogenous in age, ethnic background, and socio-economic status. Acting in a group likely has a disinhibiting effect, when I could get my teeth back in, on the perpetrators, while misogyny or othering allows them to disregard victims. Other patterns of sexual exploitation that this audit was also made aware of include sexual exploitation of girls within street gangs, where the motive is sexual gratification of gang members, but also to lure girls into working for them. Child sexual exploitation has also emerged as a key feature in children who are victims of modern slavery, a term that includes any form of human trafficking, slavery, servitude, or forced labour. The nature of child sexual abuse in general has been changed by the growth of online sexual abuse offending, which now accounts for 40% of all sexual abuse crime. This has altered the age profile of offenders and to an extent the gender profile too, making it harder to see the profile of both perpetrators and victims of group-based child sexual exploitation. Well, do you know what? If the police and the authorities actually did their damn jobs right and recorded all the data, including the ethnicity, the age, if they're male or female, their religion, yeah? I don't think we'd have half the issues we're seeing right now. We know exactly what the frick is going on and we deal with it. I say we deal with it, I mean the authorities. Let me be very clear on that. So the growth in reporting of child criminal exploitation might have affected how child sexual exploitation is identified. It's easier for a police officer to realise a child is being criminally exploited, for example, through finding them with a significant amount of drugs or money, than it would be to spot the often subtle signs that the same child was also being sexually exploited. This audit is concerned that because of this, patterns of child sexual exploitation may be obscured. Am I taking stupid pills here? To me, it is extremely, extremely simple, and it goes like this. If you are an adult and you are having sex with a child or molesting a child, any way, shape or form, a pedo. It is as simple as that. You are a monster, and you need to be arrested, you need to be charged, and you need to be prosecuted. And then you need to be put in jail behind bars forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, amen. And if you're not from this country, fucking ported to where you came from. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye, that's it. A lot of these cases, the police, the authorities knew. We're seeing story after story after story. The police, the authorities, they see the children. They see that they are in a sexual relationship with freaking adults. But instead of dealing with the adults, because again, they're scared of, being called racist, this, that, and the other, no, they put it on the victim. The victim gets called a prostitute, child victim, right? Or they say that the child victim is aware and has chosen to do this. Huh? And in some cases, the child victim gets done and prosecuted, whilst the real monsters run away free to be able to target another child. It's not just that, patterns of child sexual exploitation may be obscured. I am under the full belief that the police, the authorities, 99.9% of cases, all right? I'll give them a slight benefit. Only a slight. But in 99.9% of cases, I am under the distinct belief they knew that it was a child sexual exploitation case and did nothing because they were scared of being seen as racist. It's as simple as that. Victims and perpetrators of group-based child sexual exploitation. So, here, national police data confirms that the majority of victims of child sexual exploitation are girls, 78% in 2023, with the most common age for victims being between 10 and 15 years old, which is 57% in 2023. Most perpetrators are men, 76% in 2023. The data suggests that the age profile of perpetrators varies, with 39% of suspects aged 10 to 15 and 18% aged 18 to 29. This younger age profile is likely to be resulting from an increase in reporting of online and child-on-child offending. The ethnicity data collected for victims and perpetrators of group-based child sexual exploitation is, wouldn't you know it, not sufficient to allow any conclusions to be drawn at the national level. Oh. Wow. Wow. There are flaws in the way data is collected and then presented. The latest data from COCAD covers all child sexual abuse and exploitation committed by 2 or more perpetrators. It therefore includes a wide range of offending, including familial abuse, child-on-child abuse, abuse in institutions, as well as group-based child sexual exploitation that obscures the picture. Now, let's look at the ethnicity of the perpetrators here. So the question of the ethnicity of the perpetrators has been a key question for this audit, having been raised in inquiries and reports going back many years. We found that the ethnicity of perpetrators is shied away from and is still not recorded for 2/3 of perpetrators, so we're unable to provide any accurate assessment from the nationally collected data. There's only going to be so long, right, that Labour and all the Labour allies, right, can turn round and say, well, not just the Muslims that do it. No, it's not. Of course it's not. Don't be so freaking stupid. My monster wasn't Muslim, right? However, when this national inquiry goes underway and we hold their feet to the fire to make sure they do the inquiry right, I'm not going to be surprised when the inquiry turns around and says that the majority are Muslim men. I mean, I went through a report with you guys about 4 or 5 months ago where it literally says in there that the majority of people that are being prosecuted under this despicable crime are Muslim and male. Yeah. So, very convenient for Labour and the Labour allies for now. TikTok, though, time's running out. Despite the lack of a full picture in the national data sets, there's enough evidence available in local police data in 3 police force areas which we examined, which shows disproportionate numbers of men from Asian ethnic backgrounds amongst suspects for group-based child sexual exploitation, as well as in the significant number of perpetrators of Asian ethnicity identified in local reviews and high-profile child sexual exploitation prosecutions across the country, to at least warrant further examination. More effort is required to identify the nature of group-based child sexual exploitation and, in particular, the ethnicity of perpetrators and offender motivations in order to understand it better and to tackle it more effectively. Yeah. And what's really interesting on this is that at the moment, the report is describing the perpetrators as Asian ethnic backgrounds. Again, let's call it as it is, Muslim. Let's call it as it is. Before I go any further, before I lose this mic drop, Lisa, thank you so much for the £2 super chat saying, sorry I'm late. You're here, mic drop, Lisa. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. Also, as well, Millwall 666 thank you so much for the £3 super chat and the thumbs up. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Keep the support coming if you can. In the meantime, data about child sexual exploitation and other services. The identification of child sexual abuse and exploitation is falling in children's services despite a rise in police recording of child sexual abuse. Child protection plans where children have been identified as needing protection from significant harm on the grounds of sexual abuse have fallen to their lowest level in 30 years. There's no data published by children's services about group-based child sexual exploitation. There has also been a decline in the number of serious case reviews about child sexual exploitation in recent years. This is not by accident. This is not by accident. And this is where Labour and the Tories are to blame, because over the years, councils have had to cut back on services such as child services. And because they've had to cut back, it means that they don't have enough manpower to be able to deal with child sexual abuse and exploitation that's happening in their own towns and cities. So because they don't have enough manpower to deal with it, of course the recording of these crimes are going to decrease as a result. Of course. That's on the councils being corrupt with money in the first place anyway, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, right? But secondly, it's also on the Tory and the Labour governments that over the years have reduced funding to councils and told councils to belt up and cut costs where they can. They've been cutting costs. This is unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, one of the grave consequences of it. Report goes on, in policing, data and intelligence for identifying and investigating child sexual exploitation is stored across multiple systems which do not communicate either within a force, between police forces or with partners. This goes to what I said earlier on, right? If you've got a situation where the data's confusing, there's not enough data or there's data missing, right? What does that do to the person that reads the data, i.e. us, the public? It confuses the public and it keeps us in the dark as to what's really going on, right? The fact that multiple systems didn't communicate with each other, within the force, between police forces or with partners, only adds to my belief that that's by design to ensure that there was confusion with the British public as to what really is going on and to keep us in the dark. I'm firmly of the belief of that. National data or analysis on group-based child sexual exploitation was not found in health services. Criminal justice data on prosecutions, while showing an upward trend in prosecutions, do not distinguish between different forms of child sexual abuse or on offenders operating in groups. Despite this, some police forces have developed more approaches to better investigate group-based child sexual exploitation, pursue the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Successful methods include treating group-based child sexual exploitation investigations like major crime, using organised crime tactics investigations, working with partners to proactively and sensitively seek victims based on known risk factors and data within their own systems, and providing specialist support for victims to get cases through the courts. Now, going on to the denial section, our collective failure to address questions about the ethnicity of grooming gangs has dominated political and institutional focus, with energy devoted to proving the point on one hand or avoiding or playing it down on the other, and still with no definitive answer at the national level. Now, I'm reading through this, and this is absolutely damning, not only for Labour but for the Tories as well, because let's be real here, yeah? The Labour government have got a lot to answer for. The Tories do as well. Let's not forget, before Labour came into power last year, the Tories were in government for over 10 years. And then it was Labour before that. So the Tories trying to do this victory parade right now, saying, yay, we're the ones that ensured that this national inquiry is going to happen, this, that and the other, and doing a victory lap. I'd say to the Tories, sit the F back down. Back down. You absolute morons. Don't you remember you were in power for over 10 years before Keir Starmer came in last year? You absolute dicks. It happened under their watch as well. And they're just as complicit as far as I'm concerned. So I'm keeping the same energy here. Labour are corrupt to the core, and the Tories are just as corrupt to the core. They're trying to make themselves out now to be the heroes of it all. No. No. Any political party trying to take credit on Keir Starmer's U-turn last week to have a national inquiry into it all, they all need to sit down and check themselves first. Because they don't get any credit at all. No credit whatsoever. They could piss off. The closest a politician can get credit for it is Rupert Law. The real credit goes to the victims of these child rape gangs that over the years have tried so hard to speak out and make people listen, the politicians listen, the police listen, the councils listen, and the authorities listen. They're the heroes. They're the ones we need to be applauding. The ones that come a close second, in my opinion, is, like I said, Rupert Law's first, Tommy Robinson's the other. He's been right all along. So, despite reviews, reports and inquiries raising questions about men from Asian or Pakistani backgrounds grooming and sexually exploiting young white girls, the system has consistently failed to fully acknowledge this or collect accurate data so it can be examined effectively. The reason why they didn't collect accurate data on this, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, because they knew that if they did, that the data would empirically prove that the majority of these monsters are Pakistani and Muslim. Again, the fact that there's not enough data on this, it's by design. It's by design. It's not because they're stupid. They're not. They're not. They're really not. So instead, flawed data is used repeatedly to dismiss claims about Asian grooming gangs as sensationalised, biased or untrue. Or they'll dismiss claims about it by trying to call us far right. Well, guess what? We're not far right. We're just right. Big, massive difference. This does a disservice to victims and indeed all law-abiding people in Asian communities and plays into the hands of those who want to exploit it to sow division. On top of the avoidance of ethnicity issues, we also retain an ambivalent attitude to adolescent girls, both in society and in the culture of many organisations. We too often judge them as adults, so-called adultification, especially those in local authority care, who too often are fast-tracked into growing up before their time. Nevertheless, they cannot consent to their own abuse. They remain children. One effect of this is that children are still criminalised for offences they committed whilst being groomed. It's absolutely disgusting. Child victims, right, are being criminalised. Not the actual monsters. You think it should be the other way around? Am I living in upside down land? It's as if, right? Let's put it this way, right? It's as if this happened. Now, I actually did do this. I went to the police in the end. And I reported on my monster. And it's at a stage at the moment where I'm happy out. I'll just leave it at that. They believed me, of course. They took my evidence, files open, done. Okay. It's as if the alternative happened. Go to the police. I tell them, when I was 10 and younger, I had this monster in my life who repeatedly raped and sexually molested me. And they then turn round and arrest me for it. Where's the outrage? And I ask specifically, where's the outrage from the Muslim community on this? I'm not hearing a lot from the Muslim community on this publicly at all. To me, my perspective on it all, they're very silent. Why would that be? So Adults who were victims of abuse as children, getting back to the report, are still fighting today to be believed, and there's palpable frustration that the organisations, their leaders, or sometimes the individuals working for them, are so rarely held to account for wrongdoing. In most areas where reviews and inquiries have been held, there has been at best a reluctance to accept the need for people to understand what has happened. Until this is done, it will be hard to move on. Blindness, ignorance, prejudice, defensiveness, and even good but misdirected intentions all play a part in a collective failure to properly deter and prosecute offenders or to protect children from harm. Now, this is really scary because I didn't even know that even taxes were involved in all this. So here they say, as a key part of the nighttime economy, taxis have historically been identified as a way children can be at risk of sexual exploitation. Local authorities issue taxi licenses in line with statutory guidance issued by the government, but in some areas, especially those who have recognised problems of child sexual exploitation, local authorities go above and beyond this statutory guidance to provide additional protection for children. However, they are being hindered by a lack of stringency elsewhere in the country and legal loopholes, which mean drivers can apply for a licence anywhere in the country and then operate in another area. The Department of Transport should close this loophole immediately and introduce more rigorous standards. Why does this loophole even freaking exist in the first place? This loophole is providing a vital framework for these rape gangs to operate in. Best believe the authorities knew about this loophole, and it's still here to this day. Why ain't they closed it? Why haven't they closed this loophole? When they knew what it was being used for, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever. This is insane. Let me just sort out the Sarge here, as I like to call her. Hey up, Sarge, I've got you. Let me see if I can just quickly find you on the live chat so I can make you a mod. Yeah, where are you? Gonna make you a mod. There we go. I think I just saw someone else before I continue. I think I just saw Lewis in the live chat as well, guys. Again. Here. Sorry, guys, just give me a moment. This is a brand new channel, pretty much. It's only 5-6 months old. This is my second live on this channel, and so I don't really have any mods on here yet. I've got a couple. Just seen someone else. Here we go. Sort you out, mate. There we are. Lewis from Nerd Report, if you're still watching, I've just made you a mod as well. Lovely to see you. Hope you're doing well, hon. Okay. Yeah, here we are. Nerd Report. Hey up, Nerd Report! Nerd Report in the house. My good friend Lewis. Please make sure you subscribe to him over at Nerd Report. He's essentially one of my big brothers as far as I'm concerned. Right. Let's crack on with this. So, age of consent. Despite the age of consent being 16, we found too many examples of child sexual exploitation criminal cases being dropped or downgraded from rape to lesser charges where a 13 to 15-year-old had been in love or had consented to sex with the perpetrator. This is due to a grey area in the law where, although any sexual activity with 13 to 15-year-olds is unlawful, the decision on whether to charge and which offence to charge with is left more open to interpretation. I didn't even know there was this grey area in the law. As far as I'm concerned, if you are an adult and you're having sex with a child under the age of 16 in this country, you're a pedo. And you need to be prosecuted and you need to be behind bars. Never, ever, ever to breathe free, fresh air ever again. Why is this grey area here? Again, the politicians will know about this grey area. Let's not be stupid here. The politicians, the police force, the authorities, the councils, every single one of them will have known about this grey area. And if you asked every single one, right, if you knew someone that was having, that was being a monster, right? So let's say a child between 13 and 15 years old, would you call them a pedo? Every single one of them, I'm sure of it, would say yes. So why is this grey area here? Why is it in existence? Why hasn't there been a will from the politicians to close this grey area? I'm just asking for a friend here. What do you guys think? Now, the purpose is largely aimed at avoiding criminalising someone who reasonably believed a child was older than they were, or criminalising relationships between teenagers. But in practice, this nuance in law is being used to the benefit of much older men who had groomed underage children for sex. Do you know what? I don't give a shiz if someone believed that the child was older than they were, right? I don't give a shiz about that. At the end of the day, it is your responsibility when you meet someone to ensure that they are of legal age. End of, done, sorted, that's it. If you don't do your due diligence, I'm sorry, but ignorance should not protect you from the law. It's as simple as that. Now, not to be flippant, but let's say teenager on teenager action. I get that, okay. They're both teenagers, around about the same age. Let's say a 15-year-old lass with a 15-year-old lad kind of thing. Okay, I get that. Fine. There is that kind of nuance that even I can, okay. But to say that there's a grey area just in case an adult accidentally is a monster to an underage child because they thought they were older than they actually were. Nah. No. That excuse does not wash with me. Does it wash with you? Don't wash with me. F that noise. So, here, Baroness Casey is saying the law should be changed so adult men who groom and have sex with 13 to 15-year-olds receive mandatory charges of rape, mirroring the approach taken in countries like France. Yeah. I mean, Keir Starmer is bumming Europe so fucking hard right now, yeah? If he wants us to be like Europe, then do you know what, Keir Starmer? Let's be like Europe then. Let's be like France. That automatically, yeah, will charge you with rape if you have sex with a 13 to 15-year-old, no matter in what. Let's do it then. Oh, let's go one step further. Some of the European countries have banned the burqa. Well, do you know what? He's got such fucking hard on, right, for Europe. Follow them on that as well. Why not, right? Why not? Let's go all in. Let's go all in, yeah? Only when it suits, interestingly. Recommendations. So we set out 12 recommendations from this audit to tighten the law and to make it clear that children cannot consent when they've been raped. I mean, for this to be a recommendation in the first place is mind-blowing. Of course, a child can't freaking consent. The child doesn't know what they're consenting to. Best believe, I know. The child cannot consent. Why? Because the child does not have enough experience. No matter how much the child may protest, is not at all mature enough, doesn't have enough knowledge of sex and intimacy to be able to consent in the first place from either having a relationship, having sex with an adult man. That to be a recommendation. Make it clear that children cannot consent. It's a sad state of affairs when that has to be the first recommendation. It really is. The second one, implement a more vigorous approach to the rights, to right the wrongs of the past, bringing more perpetrators to justice, holding agencies to account for past failings, and delivering justice for victims. Improve the information and intelligence we collect and use to inform our approaches to tackling child sexual exploitation. Ensure we share information more effectively, use information smartly, and apply the best operational approaches across safeguarding agencies. Sorry, as I just get my teeth back in right there. Victims and survivors, a personal note from Baroness Casey. So she writes, I met many victims of child sexual exploitation when I conducted the inspection of Rotherham Council in 2016. I was outraged, shocked and appalled at their treatment, not only at the hands of their vile abusers, but at the treatment afforded them by those who were supposedly there to help and to be accountable, such as their police force and their council. Those responsible in Rotherham denied any wrongdoing and tried to shirk accountability. I did the absolute most I could with the power apportioned to me. The council taken over by commissioners from central government, the council leadership resigned en masse upon receiving the report, and I passed on the names of perpetrators who had yet to be uncovered to the police. This is horrific. Horrific. Even now, I believe they're still trying to cover their ass. Time's up. Alexis J ensured that South Yorkshire Police could no longer have control over investigating the appalling crimes, where there were over 1,400 girls estimated to have been abused. They had been incompetent at best, sometimes turning a blind eye, but often actively enabling abuse, and corrupt at worst. This is damning. The National Crime Agency was brought in, and Operation Stovewood took command whilst I was inspecting the council. By its own acknowledgements, Stovewood had a slow and frustrating start, but has worked to achieve over 39 convictions so far. Those already sentenced have been jailed for a total of around 470 years, and the operation has kept a particular focus on guiding and supporting the victims. Yeah. How many of those have been jailed that are not from the country, that we should really deport back to where they came from? Perhaps I was complacent that the message the intervention in Rotherham had sent would ensure that victims would be treated better in future, coupled with the public outcry over what's been uncovered elsewhere, in places such as Telford, Greater Manchester, Oxfordshire. I assumed we would all wake up to the fact that these were abused children, and it would mean that the police, councils, health and other agencies would do their damnedest to make sure these victims were given as much care, respect and chance at justice as possible. It's a reasonable kind of expectation. I would reasonably expect that, wouldn't you? Fortunately, the opposite freaking happened. So she then says, I'm not naive. These cases are difficult. They take a long time to investigate, if they're even reported, let alone to see justice done in court. And I would actually rephrase that, saying they take a long time to investigate, sorry, let me get my teeth back in and start again. They take a long time to investigate if they are even reported, or if they even reported and they actually do something about it. As Baroness Casey said previously, a lot of them got ignored and nothing happened whatsoever. Some of the victims actually got charged and prosecuted themselves for bogus crimes. Stupid. It's insane. And these children, who are often adults by the time they're going through the criminal justice system, are often difficult too. Wouldn't you be if you'd been through what they had been? Maggie Oliver of the Maggie Oliver Foundation kindly brought together a group of survivors. Before meeting them, I had at least a small hope that these women, who had so kindly travelled from far and wide, would reassure me that some progress had been made. I was so disappointed that what I had heard about the treatment of victims in Rotherham 10 years ago was still being experienced in the present day. As best believe, if you think this happened in the past and that it's behind us now and it belongs in the past, oh, no. This is still happening today, right now. These women were rightly angry at what had been allowed to happen to them as children, but they seemed equally traumatised by their current treatment by statutory agencies. They told me they had been asked to support the reopening of their case for prosecution, reliving their experiences, only to have no progress and no explanation, in one case for over 6 years after agreeing to take part. That is torturous for a survivor. Were offered reassurances that arrests and charges would be made, but continue to see the abusers walk free. That's a nightmare. That's a living nightmare. Personally, I mean, thank goodness I know my monster's in a different country. However, if I was in that unfortunate situation where out of my control, yeah, I had to live in the same city, the same town, the same village as my monster. And I had to see him on a regular basis, just walking around town or whatever. Oh! Mm. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh, no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I won't stand for that. I won't stand for that. Not a chance. Not a chance in hell. My fantasy of having my monster's head and repeatedly banging it against a brick wall until the skull cracks and the brains come out and everything until my monster's head is literally non-existent. That fantasy could potentially become a reality. Could potentially become a reality. Thank goodness for him, he lives in another country. Put it that way. Anyway, for these victims of child gang rapes, I feel for them. Having to go through all that, and their monsters are still free, and they have to see them walk around where they live. That's beyond torture. That's inhumane. Baroness Casey then writes that she was told by the victims that they're unable to live the lives they wanted, sometimes with criminal convictions they'd received whilst children and being groomed. This blighted their chances, for example, leaving someone able to get a bank account or go on their kids' school trips. Have their abusers break anonymity orders with impunity, circulating their images and names on social media. When reported, no explanation is given as to why it isn't prosecuted. Or we know why they weren't prosecuted. Because again, the authorities were scared of being seen as racist. Waited years for their cases to come to court while being promised meetings with the Crown Prosecution Service that never happened. Told they couldn't receive full trauma counselling in case it compromised their evidence. What? Watched as people in power who denied their abuse go on to get promotions or take early retirement with no accountability for their actions. I don't think we're angry enough. I really don't. I don't think we are angry enough with what's been going on to our British children in this country. And I'm scared that this is like the tip of the iceberg. She then says, I can't verify every single thing these women told me, but I believe them. And one thing is abundantly clear. We as a society owe these women a debt. Yeah, we do. We do. They should never have been allowed to have suffered the appalling abuse and violence they went through as children. This is especially so for those who are in the care of local authorities, where the duty to protect them was left in the hands of professionals on the state's behalf. I mean, I mentioned on this channel last week that there'd been cases whereby the monsters from the gang rapes, like family members or friends or associates, would go to the authorities to try and get legal custody over their victims, which meant that they had even easier access to them. Oh, horrifying doesn't even really describe this now. It's going beyond that. She then writes, I can only thank Maggie Oliver for the support she's offered these women and their families, often at a great personal cost. As a result of this audit, I will insist the cases of these women are looked into, and not by those who are part of the problem. I can only thank them and offer an apology on behalf of us all. This audit is being conducted with the victims front and centre of my mind, Louise Casey. Thank goodness there hasn't been enough people in authority, in the system, in the establishment, where they've got the victims at the front and centre of the mind. Instead, they've got their own ego at the front and centre of the mind to ensure that they're not seen as racist. So, the chapter summary for chapter 1, okay? Please bear in mind, guys, that because this is a 200-page report and we're only on page 13, what I'm going to be doing in each chapter is just going through the summaries of it all, okay? If you guys want to read it all in full, in depth, then you can do. If you are watching live on YouTube, the link to the full report is pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching on the replay on YouTube, it will be in the description bar below. Alternatively, guys, if you are watching on Twitter for the first time live on my Twitter account at @StephAlternerd, then you can go to my post right here, and the link to the full report is right at the top that you can see there. Okay, guys? So with that being said, let's go into the summary for chapter 1. So, chapter summary. This audit is focused on group-based child sexual exploitation of girls by grooming gangs. This is one of the most horrendous crimes in our society. It involves multiple perpetrators coercing, manipulating, and deceiving children into sex to create an illusion of consent. Public attitudes to child sexual abuse have shifted over the years as a result of campaigning by small, brave organisations and charities. It was only in 2015 that the term child prostitution was removed from legislation and replaced with child sexual exploitation. There continues to be difficulty and awkwardness in society with acknowledging and discussing child sexual abuse. It remains tougher to spot and stop in adolescence, and we are still more likely to apportion blame to older children for their own abuse. New types of child sexual abuse, such as online offending and abuse linked to child criminal exploitation, have increased, but grooming gangs and child sexual exploitation have not gone away. If anything, I would say, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, that online offending, grooming gangs, and child exploitation, they've all increased. All of it's increased. Why? Because, again, opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, the establishment has let it. They've let them get away with it, punishing the victims rather than the actual monsters. So, let's get to chapter 2 of it all. Just searching right now. Here we go. Oh, no. You know what? I'm just going to... Here we go. Right. So I'm just going to scroll down now and get to chapter 2. Chapter 2, a timeline on child sexual exploitation. Here's the chapter summary on this. There's been no shortage of initiatives and measures on child sexual exploitation since the government first defined it in 2009. However, there's been a shortage on actually getting the correct data and the accurate data of the victims and the perpetrators. Yeah. This audit is the latest in a long line of reports, reviews, recommendations, and strategies into child sexual exploitation, all of which say the same things about system failures on information sharing, training, and other processes, risk factors for victims, and a need to collect data and information on the perpetrators, including on ethnicity and culture. What emerges is a picture of a repeating cycle. Seminal moments of scandal and public outrage, which lead to bursts of government focus and activity, but no sustained improvement, leaving victims and the public with insufficient justice, action, accountability, or answers. The landscape of policy and delivery responsibilities across government departments and statutory bodies may be complex, but strong leadership, collaboration, and grip has been lacking. So that's chapter 2. Here's the timeline here. Now, if we scroll down to chapter 3 and the overview for that, again, if you guys want to read this completely in full, if you're watching on YouTube, the link for the full report is pinned live right at the top of the live chat. For those watching on Twitter, all you need to do is go onto this post here, and the link is right there, right at the top for you guys. Chapter 3, here we go. The scale of group-based child sexual exploitation. While this audit intended to bring clarity to the current scale of group-based child sexual exploitation, we found that a confusing picture of inconsistently applied definitions and data sets across the police, local authorities, health and the criminal justice system obscure it. And again, it might be a conspiracy theory, whatever, that is by design in order to keep us in the dark because we don't have the full data and therefore try and get us into a state of confusion where we'll never be able to get to the truth of it all because we're too confused. It's by design, that, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing as well is that, yeah, the definitions and the data sets inconsistently applied. Yeah, I believe that. For one reason only, right? Opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever. They tried to bend the rules and apply the law in a way that would ensure they wouldn't be looked upon as racist. Someone has to go down, right? For the rape gangs. Unfortunately, it was the victims that they were then targeted. The victims that were created as the boogeyman. The victims that were charged and prosecuted, not the actual monsters themselves. Going on to chapter 3, the summary, the concept of grooming gangs, while well known to the public, is not captured clearly in any official data set. I wonder why. Police recorded crime data shows just over 100,000 offences of child sexual abuse and exploitation recorded annually, with around 2/3, 60% of these being contact offences. Of these contact offences, an estimated 17,100 are flagged as child sexual exploitation in police recorded crime data. New police data, the complex organised child abuse data set, again otherwise known as COCAD, while suffering a number of limitations, has identified around 700 recorded offences of group-based child sexual exploitation in 2023. Given the lack of prevalence survey and how underreported child sexual exploitation is, the flaws in the data and confusing and inconsistently applied definitions and data sets, it's highly unlikely that this accurately reflects the true scale of child sexual exploitation or group-based exploitation. It's a failure of public policy over many years that there remains such limited, reliable data in this area. And again, the limited, reliable data is by design. If you hear the councils, the police, or any institutions or the politicians just turn around and say, the systems just weren't good enough. The systems weren't good enough to be able to collate the data. Or, you know, the law's not good enough, or this, that, and the other, right? Turn around and tell them to piss off and rot in hell. Because, as far as I'm concerned, they're lying to you. Let me repeat that again. As far as I'm concerned, they are lying to you. Let me put it this way. If the government can track me on my phone and know exactly where I am, know exactly what I'm doing, any moment, any day, know my life inside and out, if they can do that, yeah? You don't think they can accurately collate data from other sections of society when it comes to crimes? They can accurately collate data about me, where I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going, my tastes, my likes, my dislikes, the whole kit and caboodle, right? If they can do that, and they can, yeah? Why can't they apply that same system, that same method, that same skill set to collating data about perpetrators from rape gangs? I'm just asking for a friend here. This is why I say politicians, the police, the institution, the councils turn around and say, oh, well, the systems just weren't good enough. We didn't have the infrastructure in place. No, they do. They're just lying to you. Think about it. They know everything about us. A click of a button, they know everything about us. They know where we live. They know what we eat. They know what we drink. They know where we go. They know what we like and dislike. They know what we're reading. They know it all. It's all online. They know it. Yet, they don't know exactly the kind of data when it comes to the perpetrators of rape gangs. Come on! Come on! I'm not a fool. I was not born yesterday. Not a chance. And yeah, it is a failure of public policy over many years that there remains such limited reliable data in this area. I totally agree with that. Now, let's get on to chapter 4 and the overview for that one as we just scroll down right now. Again, for those that want to read all this in full, if you're watching on YouTube live, the link to this is pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching live on Twitter, welcome. This is my first time streaming on Twitter. You can access this full report if you go onto this tweet right here. Okay? Here we go. Chapter 4. The nature and characteristics of group-based child sexual exploitation. Nature. The grooming gangs model remains similar to well-known cases like that in Rotherham, with the targeting of vulnerable children who are often in care, have experienced abuse, episodes of going missing, or may have learning or physical disabilities. Offenders use drugs and alcohol to make children compliant, may increasingly start the grooming process online, and move children from one place to another to be exploited, using hotels to take advantage of anonymous checking in and out facilities. Victims often don't view the relationship as abusive, may become involved in criminal activities, and may recruit additional children. Grooming gangs are often loosely interconnected based around existing social connections, and so are often broadly homogenous in age, ethnic background, and socioeconomic status. Acting in a group has a disinhibiting effect on the perpetrators, whether through misogyny or othering, which allows them to disregard victims. Now, as I'm reading through all that, I have one question for the authorities here. Why didn't they arrest the monsters predominantly? Because from what I'm reading here, the majority of them used drugs and alcohol to coerce children, to force children into being compliant so that they could be raped. Let me put it another way. If I was, let's say, in the presence of a police officer, whether it's publicly or at my home or whatever, right? And they found drugs on me. Now, let me be real here. I don't do drugs. But if they did, yeah, in this scenario, I'd get arrested. I'd get arrested for possession. It's as simple as that. The police see you, they find you, they search you, and you have drugs, you get arrested for possession. Sometimes with intent to distribute, depending on how much you've got, right? And so, with a lot of these grooming gangs, right? A lot of the stories we're hearing time and time again is that their MO is to use drugs and alcohol on little children. If that's their MO, then why weren't the perpetrators of these rape gangs arrested at least for possession? At the very least for possession. Again, I'm just asking for a friend here. Because the way that the authorities, the establishment, the institution has dealt with this is maddening. And it's still happening to this day. These rape gangs are still in operation to this day. Do not be naive. They all need to be stopped. Every single last one of them. So they then say victims often don't view the relationship as abusive, may become involved in criminal activities and may recruit additional children. And that's the grooming element of it. Grooming gangs are often loosely interconnected based around existing social connections, and so are often broadly homogenous in age, ethnic background, and socio-economic status. Acting in a group has a disinhibiting effect on the perpetrators, whether through misogyny or othering, which allows them to disregard victims. True. However, the other thing that we've got to kind of be honest about as well is that acting in a group, they also have a disinhibiting effect on the perpetrators, not only through their misogyny and othering, but through their religion as well. We all know. We're not stupid. Looking at the characteristics, national data on the demographic of victims and perpetrators is poor. Most victims are girls, 78% in 2023, based on 88% of sex recorded, according to COCAD. The most common age of victims is between 10 to 15 years old, which is 57% in 2023, based on 91% of age recorded for victims, again from COCAD. All of this from COCAD. Most perpetrators are men, 76% in 2023, based on 72% of gender recorded. In 2023, 39% of suspects were aged 10 to 15, while 18% were aged 18 to 29. This younger age profile is likely to be a result of the increase in online offending, child-on-child offending, and increased reporting of offences through schools. Therefore, it may not reflect a change in the age profile of members of grooming gangs. Now, let me be a bit clearer on what I said earlier on. So, essentially, it goes like this. No matter what age, right, the perpetrator is, rape is rape. It's as simple as that. So if it's a 15-year-old raping a 12-year-old, that's rape. If it's a 29-year-old raping a 13-year-old, that's rape, okay? It's rape. It's as simple as that. Now, if you've got two, let's say 15-year-olds, yeah, and they are in a consensual relationship, okay. But if they're not, and it's a grooming element to it, where without that coercion and grooming, the other party would not have sex with them in the first place. Yeah, we're talking grooming there, we're talking rape. You see where I'm coming from there? I hope you guys do. So, here, ethnicity is shied away from despite being a question for many years and is still not recorded for 2/3 of perpetrators. Rates of collection and accuracy of ethnicity data were much higher in police data from Greater Manchester, South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. Their data shows there's been a disproportionality of group-based child sexual exploitation offending by men of Asian ethnicity in these police force areas. Oh yeah. When is someone going to be brave enough to really say what the hell is going on here? Right? Let's get to chapter 4. Sorry, let's get to the next chapter. I think it's chapter 5 actually now. Let's just scroll down and get to the next overview. Again, for those watching, if you want to read all this in full, if you guys are watching live on YouTube, the link to this full report is pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching live on Twitter, hey up guys, you can find the link to this full report on my profile. And here's the tweet right here, and there's the link. Okay, let's get to chapter 5. So, the state safety net joining the dots on group-based child sexual exploitation. Here's a summary for this. Identification of child sexual abuse and exploitation is falling in children's services, despite a rise in police reports of child sexual abuse. Sexual abuse child protection plans have fallen to their lowest level in 30 years, and reviews intended to bring about change raise the same issues again and again. Yeah, of course it's fallen in children's services. Why? Because as I said earlier on, over the years, both Labour and the Tories have gutted out council funding because of austerity. They don't have enough money to give to councils. So they turn around to councils and said, you've got to save money. You've got to cut costs where you can, cut services where you can. One of the services that's been cut over the years is child services, children's services. So, of course, there's going to be a fall in identification of child sexual abuse and exploitation, because if you're cutting those services, it means you're cutting the manpower required to identify these cases in the first place. Again, this whole situation, as far as I'm concerned, is by design. They then say national data or analysis on group-based child sexual exploitation was not found in health services and criminal justice data. In policing, data and intelligence for identifying and investigating child sexual exploitation is stored across multiple systems which do not communicate either within or across police forces or with partners. Despite this, some police forces have taken an approach to assess the scale of group-based child sexual exploitation, pursue the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Successful methods include treating group-based child sexual exploitation like a serious and organised crime investigation. Yes! That's one way to do it, don't you think? Working proactively with partners and charities to find likely victims based on known risk factors and providing specialist support to get cases through the courts. That's definitely one way that I'd be like, yeah, go nuts on them and go get these monsters. It seems pretty reasonable that they should be doing that in the first place. The fact that they haven't is absolutely inhumane beyond at this point. Beyond. Now, we're going to get on to the overview for Chapter 6. Again, for those watching, if you want to read all this in full, of course you can. If you're watching live on YouTube, the link to this full report is pinned right at the top of the live chat. For those watching on Twitter, hey up guys, you can find the link on this tweet right here, which you should find actually below the Twitter live that you're watching right now, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's get on to Chapter 6, Denial. Despite reviews, reports and inquiries raising questions about men from Asian or Pakistani ethnic backgrounds, grooming and sexually exploiting young white girls, the system has consistently failed to fully acknowledge this or collect accurate data so the issue can be examined effectively. Instead, flawed data is used repeatedly to dismiss claims about Asian grooming gangs as sensationalised, biased or untrue. This does a disservice to victims and indeed all law-abiding people in Asian communities. There you have it, guys. If anyone, right, is turning around and dismissing the claims about Asian grooming gangs, calling the claims sensationalised, biased or untrue, point them to this section right here from Baroness Casey's report, please. Please, I dare you to. And then ask them if they're still going to repeat that same claim afterwards. Be interested to find out what they say, right? Chapter summary continues. The collective failure to properly address these questions has meant that this issue has dominated political and institutional focus. This plays into the hands of those who want to exploit it to sow division. Perpetrators of these crimes exploit gaps in the state safety net there to protect children, and we as society sometimes treat these vulnerable children as adults making poor choices. Too many wait for justice, or even in some cases are criminalised for offences committed under coercion. The organisations, their leaders, or sometimes the individuals working for them are rarely held to account when things go wrong. Inquiries focus on systems and procedures rather than on those who have done wrong, and recommendations for change are not driven through with sufficient determination. Blindness, ignorance, prejudice, defensiveness, and even good but misdirected intentions all play a part in a collective failure to properly deter and prosecute offenders or to protect children from harm. Injustice prevails. Injustice has prevailed over decades of this disease that's been ravaging our country, our society, and it needs to stop now. Now, this here, right? The collective failure to properly address these questions has meant that this issue has dominated political and institutional focus, plays into the hands of those who want to exploit it to sow division. Okay. No. Let's put it this way. Personally, for me, I'm not exploiting shiz. I'm just reporting on what's being said in this report, giving you guys the overview, giving you my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever. What did I say? Do your own research, come to your own conclusions, right? All that malarkey. I'm not inciting hatred to anyone or particular group, religion, etc. This is not playing into hands of those who want to exploit it to sow division. Why? Because the division's already there. The division has already been caused by the police, the councils, the institution, the politicians. They've created the division. And the division is this. Rape gang monsters get away with it. The victims don't. They've created that division. The division's already there, but it's of their own making. Do you see where I'm coming from there? Yet they've got the cheek to accuse us of sowing division. No, they've already done it themselves. We're just fighting back at this point and turning around and saying enough of this BS. We want to protect our kids. And you're not going to punish us for trying to do that. Not a chance in hell. Let's get to chapter 7. As we're going through this report, my goodness, what are you guys thinking to it all? Let me know in the live chat and I'm going to pick out some of your comments. Anyone that sends a super chat, your comments are guaranteed to be read out on YouTube. Any others, I'll just pick and choose what stands out to me, but your chats are not guaranteed to be read, so please do bear that in mind. Let's get on to chapter 7, taxi licensing. So as a key part of the nighttime economy, taxis have historically been identified as a way children can be at risk of sexual exploitation. Local authorities issue taxi licenses in line with statutory guidance issued by the government. Some go above and beyond this statutory guidance as a means of combating child sexual exploitation, but they are being hindered by a lack of stringency in other local authorities and legal loopholes, which means drivers can apply for a license anywhere in the country. Anywhere. Proper safeguards in the licensing for taxis is as much about protecting the drivers as the passengers. The Department for Transport should close this loophole immediately and introduce more rigorous standards. If anyone turns around and says that the authorities, the police, the councils, the government, the politicians did not know about this loophole, I'm going to tell them to piss off. Of course they knew about this loophole. They're not dumb again. They're not stupid. They knew about this loophole, did nothing about it. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Why? Again, for fear of being called racist. How dare you limit where I can and can't work in my taxi? You're being racist. Blah, 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 blah. That's all my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever. What do you guys think? But the notion, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, the authorities knew the taxi infrastructure was being used for these rape gangs, and they did nothing about it. And this loophole continues to be in existence to this day, is absolutely despicable and disgusting. Because best believe these rape gangs are still using this loophole, still using this taxi infrastructure. And the ones that are paying the price? Children! Child victims. They're the ones that are paying the price for this right now. Get to the next one. Chapter 8, age of consent. Can't even believe this has to be a chapter. Our age of consent is 16. If you are an adult and you have sex with an underage child, you are a pedo. It is as simple as that. No ifs, ands, and buts. If you are underage and you are having sex with another underage and it's consensual, both in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, no grooming, no insidious nature whatsoever, okay, fine. It's all innocent. Right, okay. But if you're underage and you are also grooming someone else who's also underage, coercing them, forcing them into having sex with you, oh, the book should be thrown at you as well. The whole lot of you. So yeah, I can't believe that this age of consent is even a chapter. I can't believe it. It's insane. So, here we are. Despite the age of consent being 16, we've found too many examples of child sexual exploitation criminal cases being dropped or downgraded from rape to lesser charges, where a 13 to 15-year-old had been in love with or had consented to sex with the perpetrator. This is due to a grey area in the law, where although any sexual activity with 13 to 15-year-olds is unlawful, the decision on whether to charge and which offence to charge with is left more open to interpretation, or is left more open for the authorities to have a get-out clause, to not do a damn thing about it, to not protect the victim, so that they can hold their heads high and be like, at least we're not racist. No. You might think you're not racist, but on the other hand, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, you're enabling the rape gangs by allowing them to continue without throwing the absolute book at them. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? So the intention behind this is largely aimed at avoiding criminalising someone who reasonably believed a child was older when they were, or criminalising relationship between teenagers. Again, relationship between teenagers, as long as it's consensual, fine. If it's not, then there's a problem that needs to be dealt with, of course. But no ifs, ands, or buts. Ignorance is not a defence when it comes to the law. If you are an adult, yeah, you're going to enter into a relationship with someone, your responsibility to ensure that they are of age, just as it is the other way around as well. If not, and you accidentally get intimate with an underage person, an underage a child, yeah, that's still rape. It's called statutory rape. And you should still have the book thrown at you. Because you're turning around and saying, well, I didn't know their real age. I didn't know they were older than they were, blah, 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 blah. No. The fact of the matter is, in that scenario, you have still had sex with an underage child. A child. Rape is rape. Statutory rape is statutory rape. You'd think the police and the authorities would know that. Quite clearly, for some reason, they don't. Because we've got this. So in practice, they say this nuance in the law is being used to benefit of much older men who would groom vulnerable children for sex. In other words, this loophole, this grey area, this nuance in the law, right, is being taken advantage of by the rape gangs themselves. I feel sick, do you? The law should be changed so adult men who groom and have sex with 13 to 15-year-olds receive mandatory charges of rape, mirroring the approach taken in countries such as France. They're underage. Why we even need this recommendation is beyond me, because the age of consent is 16 years old. Anything below that, and not of the age of consent. Therefore, it is rape. At the very least, statutory rape. If you're trying to claim ignorance and you didn't know their true age. Underage is underage. Otherwise, why do we have an age of consent in the first place? If the age of consent is 16, then why aren't we keeping to that? Why is this, oh, well, if the 13 to 15, no, the age of consent's the age of consent. That shouldn't be argued. That rule shouldn't be bent in any way, shape or form. It's a very distinctive line, okay? Anyone 16 and above can consent. Anyone that's below 16 cannot consent. There's a very distinctive and very easy to understand line right there. Yet there's this grey area, this nuance in the law that, yeah, lo and behold, these rape gangs, they're taken advantage of. And they've been taking advantage of this nuance in the law for decades. But again, authorities, the police, the councils, the politicians, oh, they knew, of course they knew about this grey area as far as I'm concerned. And guess what? This grey area still exists, which means they've done naff all yet again. Another loophole, another nuance in the law these rape gangs have been able to take advantage of. And again, the child victims have had to pay the price for it. To pay the price of the police, the institution, the councils, the government's non-action or inaction to protect them. Because they're more bothered about not looking racist rather than protecting our kids. That's what it's come down to. I've seen the headlines. I've read the news. I'm sure you guys have as well. No wonder Keir Starmer did a U-turn last weekend and announced that there would now be a national inquiry into the rape gangs. Because she's the freaking bed, you guys. This report is damning. Not only for Labour, but for Tories as well. Because as I said earlier on, the Tories were in power for over 10 years before Labour came in last year. It was all happening under their watch as well. Yeah, I'm pissed off at Labour. I'm equally pissed off at the Tories as well. And the Tories trying to do a sing and dance, a victory parade. Yay, thanks to us, we're now getting a national inquiry, this, that and the other. I'm not thanking them for shiz. For shiz. I thank the victims, the brave victims, the brave survivors of these rape gangs for coming forward. For not stopping. For being absolutely relentless to get all this out in the open for what we know so far. I thank them. Who comes a close second? Rupert Law. I would also say Elon Musk. They would come a close second. But ultimately, our thanks and gratitude goes to the brave survivors of these rape gangs that are speaking out and have spoken out over the years, over the decades. There's another person actually that I'd like to thank, that I'd thank as well as a close second, and that's Raj Amir. Make sure you're following him on Twitter, because, my goodness, he has done a lot for that movement as well. But ultimately, going back to my point, the Tories are trying to do a victory dance, saying, yay, we did it. No, they did shit. They did shit. They shouldn't be taking any credit whatsoever. If anything, they should be hanging their heads in shame. because a lot of this happened whilst they were in power for over 10 years before Labour came in last year. I do not have a short memory. Not at all. Okay, so conclusions and recommendations. So, this report on group-based child sexual exploitation results from a rapid audit of available data and literature, backed up by a fieldwork in a number of areas. We have found that there's been a lot of attention paid to the issue and numerous reviews. Inquiries and reports have made recommendations for improvements over many years. Despite this, gaps remain in the data and in work to properly understand the nature of group-based child sexual exploitation, the motivations and drivers of offenders, and the impacts on victims. Improvements have not been implemented with sufficient rigour or determination, have been allowed to drift, or have not been acted on. So, for Labour's protestations to turn around and say, oh, well, we've implemented the recommendations from the J inquiry, right? Been hearing that a lot, the J inquiry, the J inquiry, the J inquiry. Well, Baroness Casey's turning around and saying that's BS. That's my interpretation of it. Improvements have not been implemented with sufficient rigour or determination, have been allowed to drift, or simply have not been acted on. So, Keir Starmer, your whole argument of, well, we don't need a national inquiry because we've got the J inquiry, the J report, and we're implementing their recommendations, this, that, and the other. Yeah, are you lying? Baroness Casey essentially is saying the exact freaking opposite, as far as I'm concerned. And hint, I'm not going to be surprised if he's lying. Would you? So, this audit presents an opportunity for the government, for our policing, justice and safeguarding agencies and the country as a whole to draw a line in the sand between all of the previous reviews and a new commitment to take a series of significant actions to make sure we do not end up back here again in a few years' time. These actions need to be accompanied by commitments to honest transparency and to prioritising the safety of children above all else, by an apology to all the victims of child sexual exploitation who have been let down in the past, and by a more rigorous and relentless pursuit of the minority of men who have preyed on vulnerable children and looked for gaps in our safeguarding systems to commit heinous crimes. Unless government and all the organisations involved are able to stand up and acknowledge the failures of the past, to apologise for them unreservedly, and to act now to put things right, including current cases, we will not move on as a society. The list of recommendations set out below are important and should be acted on swiftly. They are not a comprehensive list of actions from this audit. There are a number of findings throughout this report which require further consideration and work to better understand the problems and their solutions. That will require the collective energy, curiosity and commitment to a number of government departments and agencies, and we urge the Home Office to lead the action on this. I wouldn't freaking trust the Home Office to lead me out of a freaking paper bag. Especially with freaking Yvette Cooper in charge. She needs to be one of the first to freaking hang her head in shame and resign. Jess Phillips, another one. She's a freaking minister for safeguarding for women and girls. I'd laugh, but it ain't even a freaking joke. It's reality. Apologies for those that don't know, I'm having to grab for my tissue from time to time because, yeah, I've got a little bit of hay fever. I say a little bit. It's been pretty bad. I've been sneezing like a mofo repeatedly pretty much every day. It's not been great. Anywho, we are enormously conscious of the pressure on colleagues across statutory services in police, local government, health and the criminal justice system. That said, these offences are at the most severe end, leaving child victims scarred for life, and so need to be afforded the priority they deserve. Damn right. Before setting out this audit's recommendations, we want to acknowledge the importance of the recommendations made by the Independent Inquiry on Child Sexual Abuse, the IICSA, in their final report to improve how child sexual abuse as a whole should be tackled. Our recommendations are therefore made on the basis that their proposals for change are being implemented. Don't hold your breath on that. First, we need to see children as children. We let them down when we treat or see them as adults, especially in relation to safeguarding issues and the treatment of children in the criminal justice system. We must tighten up the law to reduce uncertainty, which adults can exploit to avoid or reduce the punishments that should be imposed for their crimes. I mean, for a report to turn around and say, first, we need to see children as children. We are at a sad state of affairs when a report literally has to point out the freaking obvious. See children as children. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I was about 13, 14 years old, I thought I was older beyond my years, right? I thought I was older beyond my years. Tried to act more mature, tried to be older. You know, I'd be like, I know better than you kind of thing. I'd hazard a good guess. A lot of you guys watching right now kind of went through something similar when you were younger, when you were a teenager, 13, 14, 15, above and beyond, right? Just because an underage child is trying to act older than they are, trying to be more mature, this, that, and the other, doesn't take away from the fact that they are still freaking children. They don't know any better. They think they do, but they don't. I thought I knew better when I was that age. Of course, I didn't. A lot of you guys that age probably thought you knew better at the time. Of course you didn't, though. But it's something that's very typical of teenagers in this country, let's say, growing up. It's a sad state of affairs when we've got a report that has to say, first, we need to see children as children. Why that's not been happening for decades with the police, the authorities, the institution, the council, the government, the politicians is beyond me. Beyond. So recommendation number 1. The law in England and Wales should be changed so adults who intentionally penetrate the vagina, anus or mouth of a child. Hard to read through it. A child under 16 receives mandatory charges of rape. Why do we not have this in place in the first place? We have statutory rape laws that should be fulfilling this recommendation. Why isn't it? I don't understand. Second, we need a vigorous approach to righting the wrongs of the past, using known vulnerability factors to identify and bring perpetrators of these terrible offences to justice, holding agencies to account for any part they played in allowing these crimes to go undetected and unpunished in the past, and delivering justice for more victims. So recommendation 2, a national police operation, a national inquiry coordinating a series of targeted investigations should be launched into child sexual exploitation in England and Wales. So look at all the past cases. And this time, do it right. Hint for all the police out there that's going to be doing this. Hint for you guys. The child is not the perpetrator. The child is the victim. If the police, the authorities, the council, the institution and the government can get that into their thick heads, maybe there's a chance for the second recommendation. So let's get on to the third recommendation. Again, if you want to read these recommendations in full, you can do. If you're watching on YouTube live, the link to this full report is pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching on replay YouTube, the link will be in the description bar below. And if you're watching on Twitter live, hey up you guys, you can find the link to this full report in this post that I made earlier on today. Okay. Recommendation 3, review the criminal convictions of victims of child sexual exploitation. Quash any convictions where the government finds victims were criminalised instead of protected. This is insane because this shouldn't even happen in the first place. How the victims were the ones that were prosecuted is inhumane and beyond any rationalisation or understanding I could even achieve. I just don't get it. But damn right. Any victims that were criminalised, that were prosecuted, Damn right, remove their convictions from the record immediately. No trace at all. It's as if it never happened on the system on paper kind of situation. Get it removed. Oh, and at the same time, go after the true monsters that should have been convicted in the first place. Third, we need to be 100% clear about what information we collect about people who commit offences in this country and those they victimise. We need to revise and improve the collection of ethnicity and nationality data of both suspects and victims for all sexual abuse and exploitation cases. And I would add to that, and stop being freaking dumb and feel that you can't do your job properly and collect all the data that's required because you don't want to be looked at like as a racist. Drop that BS. Collect the freaking data. Let's really identify the rot that has gotten hold in this country right now. I got a good idea where that rot's coming from. And I know a lot of you guys have a good idea too about that. So recommendation 4, the government should make mandatory the collection of ethnicity and nationality data for all suspects in child sexual abuse and criminal exploitation cases and work with the police to improve the collection of ethnicity data for victims. I would add on to that, and for the system to be centralised, so it's all on one system. And it's all there for every single police force, government agency, authority, council to be able to dip into. So they can stop the excuse of, well, we all use different systems and we all do things differently and record things differently. Well, do you know what? Well, let's get rid of that argument then. Let's centralise it all. It's all on one system, one set of rules, one set of data lot that you've got to put in, and you're all doing it all at the same time, all in the same way. So she then says, finally, we have to ensure much more effective sharing of information regarding children in all child abuse cases. Sharing of information to prevent harm to children should trump all data protection issues. Well, damn right. Damn right. If a child's in danger and the only way to save that child is to forego data protection, well, to hell with data protection. I'm saving the child. I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree on that as well. The sharing of information to prevent harm to children should trump all data protection issues. We should also ensure that safeguarding agencies, including the police, local authorities, schools and health services, are using information and intelligence smartly, making the best use of technology to stay ahead of criminals, that police forces are applying the best operational approaches to preventing, disrupting and prosecuting groups committing child sexual exploitation, and that local authorities are fully focused on child sexual exploitation alongside other forms of harm, and how their safeguarding and broader powers can be used to prevent it. So recommendation number 5 is mandatory sharing of information should be enforced between all statutory safeguarding partners in cases of child sexual abuse and exploitation. Compliance should be monitored by the inspectorates and overseen by the proposed Child Protection Authority. How? They're not even sharing information between them. In other words, the left hand don't know what the right hand's got. And the right hand don't know what the left hand's got. One moment. Feel like I want to sneeze. Oh. Apologies for that, guys. For those that don't know, hay fever. Oh. Here we go. So yeah, the left hand don't know what the right hand knows, and the right hand don't know what the left hand knows. Gets even worse. The left hand don't know what the right hand's doing, and the right hand don't know what the left hand's doing. It's... How? How? The system has been set up to easily allow these perpetrators in rape gangs to get away with it for decades. The system is favouring these monsters more than the actual victims. It should be the other way around. The system's there to protect us, to protect the victims, and punish the monsters. Sadly, and literally, it's been the other way freaking around. Recommendation number 6. The Department for Education should move swiftly to introduce unique reference numbers for children to improve opportunities for agencies to better share their information about children at risk of child sexual abuse. Yeah. Recommendation 7. Police information systems should be upgraded. These systems should also provide for the use of the unique reference numbers for children, which are being introduced by the Department for Education. Makes sense. Reference numbers are already being introduced by the Department for Education, so you might as well jump on board with that and use those reference numbers as opportunities for agencies to share information about children at risk of child sexual abuse. Yeah, it goes hand in hand, 6 and 7 recommendation. Recommendation number 8. Apologies, one moment. Child sexual exploitation investigation should be approached like serious and organised crime. Well, yeah. Because these rape gangs are very, very serious and they're highly freaking organised. We already read a section earlier on. Even the taxi infrastructure is in on this. This is highly organised over decades. But it's not just that. It's organised in conjunction with the authorities themselves. There's evidence. The police are complicit. Councils are complicit. Institutions are complicit. Government's complicit. It's all organised between them. It's sickening. Recommendation number 9. The Department for Education should urgently interrogate child protection data to identify the causes of the decline in child sexual abuse and exploitation representation in child in need assessment data, examine the reasons for variation across local authorities, and review the effectiveness of serious incident notifications in relation to child sexual abuse and exploitation. Recommendation 10. The government should commission research into the drivers for group-based child sexual exploitation, including online offending, cultural factors, and the role of the group. Recommendation 11. The Department for Transport should take immediate action to put a stop to out-of-area taxis and bring in more rigorous statutory standards for local authority licensing and regulation of taxi drivers. Yes, remove the loopholes, remove the legal grey areas, and remove the infrastructure loopholes that these absolute bastards are taking advantage of at the cost of our British children. Recommendation 12. The government should commit to fully resourcing the implementation of these recommendations over multiple years and to tracking their implementation across departments and other organisations with regular reports to Parliament. This recommendation I'm not fully on board with, and I'll tell you why. It should not take multiple years to implement these recommendations. We need these recommendations to be implemented now. Any further delay means that ultimately and unfortunately there's going to be further victims, child victims, during the multiple years that these recommendations are implemented. No. These recommendations need to be implemented now. Now. To save future victims. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to allow the government to kick the can down the road with these implementations. Not a chance. Then saying, well, there may be further actions arising from this audit. The victims of child sexual exploitation in England and Wales deserve nothing less than full and swift implementation of these 12 recommendations, decisive leadership and a collective determination to fix past failings and build a strong approach for the future. Then you've got the annexes and so on and so forth that you guys can read. at your leisure if you want to. The link to that full report, if you're watching live on YouTube, is pinned right at the top of the live chat. If you're watching on the replay on YouTube, it will be in the description bar below. Alternatively, if you're watching on Twitter live, hey up guys, you'll be able to find the link to the full report in my post right here. And this is the thing, right? I said this at the beginning, but for those that didn't hear it, it was quite difficult to find this link. It was really difficult to find this full report. It wasn't easy. I wonder why. I wonder why. Now, at this stage, I'm going to be going in a minute. I've been streaming for over 2 hours going through this report. I'm going to go through a couple of your comments before I go. But just to let you know, in terms of the report that we've just gone through, I may do some videos later on this week focusing on certain elements of the report. If you guys want me to do that, then let me know. Either like this stream or comment down below on the replay or comment on Twitter or comment in the live chat here on YouTube. Let me know either way. But David's saying, what's the next step? Well, we know that there's going to be the national inquiry now that's going to happen. The next step there is to hold the government's feet by the fire to ensure that the inquiry is done properly and the full, ugly, nightmarish truth is found. Everyone to know and everyone to see. And then at that point, for them to take action to ensure that this never happens again. In the meantime, with the Keir report, to implement every single recommendation now. Not for it to take years. No. To do it now. Because any further delay in implementing these recommendations, as far as I'm concerned, only means one thing. More time and more opportunity for these evil monsters in these rape gangs to lure and snare more children to become their victims. Time is of the essence. The government needs to implement these recommendations now. And them turning around and saying, oh, we don't have the infrastructure to do this, and we don't have the infrastructure to implement the recommendations now here and here and here and here. No. The infrastructure is there. It's all about the political will at this point. Because let's put it this way. If the infrastructure is there for Labour all of a sudden, right, to release thousands of prisoners, those that have been convicted of rape, assault, the most heinous crimes, yeah? The government could do it like that, yeah? And then in the meantime, arrest and prosecute those online for hurty words and put them in jail. If they've got the political will to do all that, super fast speed time. Oh, they have the what's it to be able to implement the Casey recommendations in super fast speed time. The infrastructure's there for them to do it. Of course it is. The question is, how much political will these bastards have to actually do it? So yeah, that's my answer to that. Steve's Music Johnson, I'm shocked to hear that. I understand your passion. Thank you. Let's see. John Perkins says, all the authorities are complicit because high-ups are perpetrators. Yeah. Yeah. David said, Steph needs to interview Rupert Law. I'd be honoured. I'd be honoured. I really would. Oh my goodness. Bill WHUFC says Steph needs to interview Tommy. I'd be super honoured. Super honoured. I'd be super honoured even if Rupert Law, Tommy Robinson knew of my existence. Simple as that. They're heroes in my eyes. Jimbo says, you're right, Steph. The different systems was the reason for those poor little girls in Soham. History keeps repeating itself time and time again. Enough is enough now. Enough is enough. David, this is funny. Nowhere in the Bible does it say how old Satan is when he rejects God's authority. My guess, 14. Is a good guess. It's a good guess. But I'm going to leave it with this comment right here from Anthony Byrne. That, as far as I'm concerned, it's as simple as this. Children are children. No ifs, ands, and buts. No but this and no but that. No. None of that. Children are children. And just going on the typical example, you are an adult over the age of 16 in this country and you have sex with a child underage. Shiz. You're a pedo. No ifs, ands, or buts. No stuttering. It's as simple as that. Children are children. And they deserve. They have the reasonable expectation. They have the right for our police, councils, institutions, governments to protect them. And they have failed every single one, time and time again. Because, they don't want to be seen as racist. F that. F that. F that. It's not about that. It's about protecting children. Enough is enough. So, guys, with that being said, that's me for today. I want to thank absolutely everyone that joined me live, either on YouTube or on Twitter. I will be going live simultaneously on YouTube and Twitter again. I found it to be so much fun, in a way. So thank you so much for all you guys tuning in. Yeah, I feel a little bit awkward right now and I don't know why. It's been a little bit triggering, I think, for me to go through this report. And so I just want to clarify one thing I just said. Of course, it's not been fun going through that report. What I meant was it's been fun just from a technical standpoint of me simultaneously live streaming, not only on YouTube, but Twitter. It's my first time doing this. And for me, it's a important tool to be able to simultaneously stream out to both platforms to get this information out as widely as possible from my little corner of the internet. So, that's what I meant by that. So please don't misinterpret that at all, guys. But yeah, I need to get going. When I can get my teeth back in and actually speak properly. Maybe go in a dark room, kind of calm down a little bit after what I've just gone through and read. Because it doesn't make for easy reading. It really doesn't. And it's horrific. It's dehumanizing some of the most vulnerable in our society, children. The authorities thought children did not deserve their protection because it was more important for the authorities to not be seen as racist for some reason. We need to make sure this disease is eradicated from our society. We cannot let You bastards get away with it anymore. Enough is enough. A child is a child. Treat them as such. Protect them as such. With that being said, guys, I want to thank everyone that tuned in live, whether it's, on YouTube or on Twitter. I appreciate all your faces. I appreciate all your support. Appreciate all your comments. Anyone that sent a super chat, I appreciate your extra support. Thank you so much. I appreciate anyone that's either following me on Twitter, subscribes to me on YouTube, or both. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I will continue to report on this. However hard it is for me to do, it's important to do it. It's important that we are more open about talking about it, and that we're brave to talk about it. Because if not, then I see silence as equally as complicit. We need to open our gobs wide and be loud on this. Not let up and not stop until this disease is gone from our society. Simple as. With that being said, again, thank you so much for everyone tuning in. Appreciate all your faces. And until the next time, you guys, laters.